This is the Manila Bulletin, traversing time and truth since 1900. The newspaper with a century-long legacy of standing witness to the country's history and development. Today, the Manila Bulletin strives to make the nation be fully informed, and the Manila Bulletin will continue to inform, inspire, empower, telling timely stories and timeless truths through this century and beyond.
I'm the General Manager of Convention Self Enterprise, and we've been operating for almost 4 years. Kumuha kami ng mga viewers dito sa Gawad Kalinga Enchanted Farm to provide them livelihood through weaving. Napatrain namin sila through the partnership of Philippine Textile Research Institute. At mula noon, nagawa namin na mag-hobby ng iba't ibang designs. Dumating ang panahon na nagkaroon kami ng problema dahil kakaunti lamang ang nakaka-appreciate ng mga nagagawang tela ng mga weavers natin. Papasalamat kami dahil nakilala namin ang Bayo Foundation. Marami ang nagbago. Napaka-revolutionary ng aming ginagawa. Unang-una, ang ginagamit naming materials ay polyester. Ngunit tinuruan kami na gumamit ng ibang material na talagang sustainable. Ngayon, gumagamit kami ng cotton, tinuruan kami gumamit ng mga textile offcuts para magkaroon ng supplementary work doon sa ating tela na ginagawa. Maraming natututunan ng aming weavers sa mga design, sa mga colors na nilalagay nila doon sa paghahabi. Talagang nag-evolve ang aming ginagawa dito sa paghahabi dahil nagkakaroon kami ng knowledge along the way habang kami ay nakikipag-collaborate with Bayo Foundation. At isa pa, ang aming materials ay sigurado na ito ay local. Galing dito kay hobby na talaga namang kami ay sumusuporta sa prinsipyo ng sustainability. Dumating ang Bayo Foundation, mas ramdam namin na kasama kami sa circle ng network na natutulungan nila. Mas ramdam namin na na-empower kami kasi na-witness namin na hard work, yung craftsmanship ng weaving ay talagang may potential. Nakikita namin yun doon sa mga produkto na ginagawa nila.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day two of the MAID Spectrum Lecture Series. Last week, we caught up with Fundación Censo Director, Mr. Ricky Francisco, and WTA Design Studios Principal Architect, Architect William T. Jr., about how art and design provides people with the means to nurture and heal during crisis. Today, we zero in on the power of creativity to uplift communities and influence progress. Joining us today are two organizations who champion Filipino creativity and social development. Join the discussion by leaving your comments and questions, and you could be one of the two lucky winners of limited edition made merchandise featuring this year's winning artworks. Participants who are able to complete the lectures may also request for certificates after this event. Helping us empower creatives through today's event are our advocacy partners, The Rank Magazine and Bayo, who are dedicated to uplifting the lives of Filipino artists. Visit their social media platforms at Bayo Clothing and at Rank Magazine to learn more. Welcome everyone to today's event is our guest of honor, the representative of the 4th District of Pangasinan, the Honorable Congressman Christopher Toff de Venecia.
Good day to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank Aniceto M. Sobrepena and Luis Lane Calicdan of the Metro Bank Foundation, Inc. for giving me this opportunity to have this opening message. Once again, for the benefit of those who don't know me, I am Toff de Venecia, currently serving as Congressman of the 4th District of Pangasinan and Chairperson of the Special Committee on Creative Industry and Performing Arts in the Lower House. I'm also the lead convener of the now 60-member Arts, Culture, and Creative Industries Block of the 18th Congress, or ACHIB. Before becoming a public servant, I was also involved in the creative industries myself, having been a film and television actor as a child, and then a theater actor, director, and producer. I was also lifestyle editor of Chalk Magazine and contributing editor for the Philippine Star's Young Star section. So I got to work extensively with various stakeholders from the creative industries, from filmmakers, visual artists, fashion designers, chefs, and many more. From my experience in both capacities as legislator and stakeholder in the creative industries, I realized just how important the creative economy is and how big of an impact it is for our country. The pandemic has destroyed millions of lives and continues to do so every day on so many different levels. Aside from its effects on the health of those unfortunate enough to have caught COVID-19, the pandemic has also disrupted the livelihood of so many workers in the creative industries. For months, people were stuck in their own homes in an effort to avoid public spaces and social gatherings. Even if they wanted to go out, there was virtually nowhere to go anyway. The lockdown implemented to help curb the spread of the pandemic has led to the closure of cinemas, bars, theaters, and other places where people gather to consume creative content, to socialize, and generally live their lives to the fullest. Although necessary to avoid contracting the disease, living in isolation has ironically brought about threats to our mental health. Cabin fever, a condition characterized by feelings of anxiety, restlessness, decreased motivation, and in worst cases, even depression, has become an issue. So, what helped us get through such a great ordeal? Culture and the arts. They have certainly played an integral part. Throughout the lockdown, many of us were fortunate enough to have access to television and Netflix subscriptions, develop artistic hobbies, learn new things through reading, which definitely helped us cope as we went through the height of the public health crisis. Most of those media fed our minds through the power of art. As I have said in my opening messages a few days ago, culture and the arts have the power to change lives. At the moment, people enjoy having fun, being with other people, and expressing themselves creatively. Then there are the long term impacts like shared memories, increased empathy, and a broader worldview. People who participate in culture and the arts are more likely to be in good health, go on to further education, volunteer, and donate to charity. It's therefore right that young people should be a target audience for arts engagement, efforts to encourage a lifelong love of culture and arts. These young people will be our future poets, sculptors, filmmakers, musicians, and artists. That is why the programs initiated by Metro Bank Art and Design Excellence is truly a remarkable thing, as it gives a platform for our young creatives to develop their crafts. In the uncertain times of the crisis, where all the familiar things have acquired a new reading, this exhibition and program gave a unique opportunity for young artists to share their ideas and opinions not only about the COVID-19 crisis, but also regarding the shape of the future, introducing them as torchbearers for peace, resilience, and support. I toast to this wonderful event that makes us work together in giving our many creative industries the support and recognition these young artists and creatives deserve. As I have mentioned in my plenary speech a week ago, a creative future should not be left to chance. It is planned, not dreamed. It is organized, not whimsical. It is taken seriously and not treated as an afterthought. After all, a creative future is safe, sustainable, and happy for all. Because truly, hashtag the future is creative. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you so much, Congressman De Venecia, for that inspiring message. Support for our creative industries has definitely grown over the past years. We're continuing to see positive developments in efforts to promote and protect our artists. And we are seeing more creative communities come together to help uplift one another. Our first guest for today come from one of the country's most passionate advocates for sustainable fashion, women empowerment, and Filipino heritage. Bayo's co-CEO and Chief Creative Director, Ms. Ana Lagon, and Design Sustainability Officer, Ms. Andrea dela Torre, joins us to talk about how Bayo's programs for local weaving communities. Bayo is a homegrown fashion brand that takes pride in being Filipino. Through its foundation, Bayo creates and supports programs that promote Filipino heritage, ingenuity, and sustainability. In fulfillment of its mission, Bayo supports various weaving communities under its business and outreach programs by providing weavers with opportunities for capacity building and economic growth.
Thanks, Lalaine. I'd like to thank the Metrobank Foundation and its recognition program for the visual arts, Metrobank Art and Design Excellence, for giving us this platform to share our cause. Today, I speak as a member of Bayo's Design and Sustainability team. We are a homegrown fashion brand that takes pride in being Filipino. We use our platform to support and encourage Filipino talent and ingenuity as reflected in the ethos of our company. Together with the Bayo Manila Foundation, we can go beyond making clothes. Our stories become relevant through visual expressions that are uniquely Filipino. And we echo Maid's belief that art has the power to invoke positive change in the world. Before we start, I'd like to share a story. When I was younger, I remember spending hours watching shows about eccentric artists rushing to create the perfect dress in 30 minutes. Beautiful women walk down the red carpet showcasing these strokes of geniuses. One wrong cut of the fabric felt like the end of the artist's collections. To a young person, the fashion industry seemed enticing, exciting, and exhilarating, and I was interested. But I also studied at a public university that believed serving the public was as important as striving for excellence. As much as I wanted to explore the art of fashion, I was forced to ask, is there more to it beyond the glitz and glamour? can other players still use this art form as a driver for social good? The short answer is they can. We continue to express art through fashion because fashion is creativity, communication, and utility. It is one of the purest expressions of art because it is art lived daily. Fashion is independence. Fashion is about community. Fashion is culture. Fashion is history. From contemporary designs, research into new sustainable materials, and bringing these elements into protective wear, fashion is innovation. Fashion is the future. Expressing art through fashion can be one of the most powerful ways and among the most accessible ways to support social good, but only if we choose wisely and hold brands accountable. As a member of the fashion industry, we at Bayo recognize our responsibility in ensuring ethical and sustainable practices are maintained and strengthened across our brand, impacting how we do business from employment to manufacturing. To do this, we follow 5 pillars of sustainability: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. Through fair and ethical wages, Filipino employees from the factory floor to our offices make a dignified living by creating clothing. Instead of talking about their stories, I'd like to share a documentary video with no prepared script, yet it has created the most meaningful stories.
Ako si Pirmin, 50 years na ako nanakit hanggang ngayon. Pinagmalaki ko yung trabaho namin sa gawa ko dito. Doon kami nabubuhay sa aming gawa.
Ako po ay si Virgie Espinar. Ito lang po ang binuhay ko sa mga anak kong pananahin.
Napag-aral ko rin po yung anak ko. Nakabili na po ako ng lupa at bahay. Salamat na rin po ako. Kahit po kung walang pinag-aralan, mga anak ko po naman nabuhay ko ng ayos. Kahit ako lang po mag-isa.
Ako po si Caterina, 25 years ng mananahi. Ang halos lahat po ng mga anak ko, dito ko na po napag-aral sila ng high school kasi ay nag-graduate at dito na rin po sila. Sama-sama na kami dito.
Ako po si Josephine Gomez Relucio, 48 years old po. 10 years na po akong mamulansya. Sa pamamulansya po talaga pong kanayan lang po yan. Ito na po kasi ang nakawili akong trabaho.
Ako yung mga damit po na ginagawa namin dito, magaganda po yung quality nila.
Dito, parang nakupog yung ano ko Hindi lang yung skill ko bilang mananahi. Yung bilang tao. Kasi dito natutunan ko na maging matyaga ka sa trabaho. Tapos kailangan quality yung gawa mo. Maayos, maganda.
Years, dito pa rin ako sa Bayo, sa company. Nung dito na nag-expand yung production, terms of quality, talagang halagang simula sa umpisa. And proud sa Bayo. Establish sila sa
Proud po ako dahil sa ginagawa ko, masaya ako.
medyo mahirap pero kailangan kayanin para lang maging maayos yung pagsasama-sama namin sa isang pabrikang pinangako ko rin sa sarili ko. Kaya hanggang sa uli nandito po ako. Nang dahil sa kanila nagkaroon umangat kunti yung buhay ko at saka yung pamilya ko, nabigyan ko sila ng magandang buhay.
Si Paul, si Dela, mabilis na karaan. Tsaka sa lahat, naaral nila ako, pinag nila ako, pinagams nila ng magiging ito lang parang ang ano ako, importante sa pakli mo. Hindi lang nilas yung bahay, yung hakikabuhan. Pangalawa, pero walang naniwan. Ang pinagsagot ko sa ulo, andun sa puso mo. Natutuwa nga ako dahil parang inhalagahan nila. Sino yung nasa ibaba, sa baba, like or soul, yung sa factory. Pinagaling kasi yung sa pamilya sila yung pinakaw sa ikaw.
Maganda talaga ang quality, siyempre gawa namin. Bilang Pilipino, proud na proud po ako na ang ating mga damit dito namin ginagawa sa Pilipinas.
Kaya na may pagtapatan ng kahit anumang ibang produkto.
Ang proud ako dito sa Pilipinas na gumagawa ako ng produkto na purely made in the Philippines, tatak Pinoy.
Bilang isang Pinoy, proud po ako na ang aming tinatahi ay isang bana.
That video was produced in 2017 on Bayo's 25th anniversary. In the same year, we launched the Bayo Manila Foundation. The foundation is the corporate social responsibility arm of retail fashion brands Bayo, Unica, and vice versa. During the celebration, our co-CEO and Chief Creative Officer said this: "Creativity and sustainability will be the core values in our trajectory to a better future. We have the next 25 years to make a difference as we use our creative discipline to reshape an industry that has long been linear. We will transform to become circular in thinking and in doing." Since then, the Bayo Manila Foundation launched programs impacting 4 focus areas inspired by the brand itself: BAYO, business, academics, youth, and outreach programs. We talk about circularity a lot, but what is it replacing? This is a simplified view of the linear process. Part of the manufacturing process is placing patterns onto yards of fabric and cutting them. We invested in technologies that strategically place these patterns onto the fabric to ensure minimal waste. Despite this, there are still offcuts that remain. One of the ways we close the loop on our production process is by upcycling the excess fabrics and weaving them into new ones, thus shifting to a circular economy. To build purposeful connections with like-minded creatives and communities and a framework of programs in place, the foundation began the Journey to Zero initiative, a significant step we are taking towards a fully circular business model. The next story is an interesting one. Based in Gawad Kalinga Enchanted Farm in Angat, Bulacan, the Ambention Silk Enterprise was started by a Filipino-American named John Paul Ferrer to provide a livelihood to poor Filipinos and to bring back the culture of hand weaving. But It's not always easy keeping a social enterprise afloat. They face difficulties like lack of steady demand for high-value products such as hand-woven textiles, irregular flow of work being processed, and they had to deal with 2 out of 3 initial weavers leaving to look for other opportunities that could provide for a more stable income. Short-lived projects and collaborations came and went. If not for the perseverance of Gino, their general manager, and his team of weavers, they would have given up once again. When asked about why he chose to stay, Gino said this: "I choose to stay in Ambention because I believe in my vision that it is worth pursuing to bring back, preserve, and promote something that our country has treasured hundreds of years ago, our local textile and weaving skills." With Gino's keen attention to his vision, he continued to scout for opportunities that he could provide for his team of weavers, together with their founder, John Paul Ferrer. In 2019, Gino came across a startup that he later found to be an affiliate brand of the Bayo Foundation. With this new partnership, the Bayo Foundation supported Ambention Silk, initially providing sustainable work for the weavers under its outreach program. But eventually, it went beyond the expected results because the foundation provided looms and materials needed to improve the overall capacity of the Ambention team, thus transitioning their community under the business programs. This will create a more sustainable future for the Ambention team. Through this project, we've managed to provide locally sourced cotton yarns as an alternative to polyester yarns, and upgrade their skills by introducing new processes. You can see from the image how we've introduced using excess fabrics, the white offcuts placed on top, from our production as supplemental wefts to new fabric weaves. Committed to expanding to train more weavers and sustain its economic growth, Bayo Foundation continuously provides steady support and access to market opportunities for the Ambention Silk enterprise. The program we have for Ambention has become our benchmark in our purposeful connections for the art of weaving. Training the weavers uses a creative discipline that goes hand in hand with preserving our Filipino culture. Every warp and weft of thread has its powerful story, as it speaks of our beautiful history that encourages meaningful conversations. The pandemic did not hinder us from pushing forward our commitment to support the Filipinos. Our company was one of the first to respond to our health workers' needs when protective clothing was scarce. Last March 2020, we shared our capabilities as fashion makers when we pivoted to become a maker of PPEs. It has again proven that the creative industry has more to offer than just doing products for profit. When no one was allowed to go out, we were given the permit to operate and make PPEs. I'm proud to share that for a couple of months, Bayo produced them as donations through the partnership with the Office of the Vice President. The OVP provided the fabrics while Bayo produced them. Eventually, our capability to create products supporting the needs of health workers opened up prospects for substantial business opportunities. It paved the way for our employees to have regular jobs despite the ECQ. The challenges brought about by the current pandemic did not hold back the commitment of the company to achieve its Journey to Zero initiatives continuously. It was just last year when Bayo was invited to become a participant member in the United Nations Global Compact. The UNGC is a pact to encourage businesses and firms worldwide to adopt a sustainable and socially responsible policies and to report on their implementation. Bayo is the first fashion retail mainstream brand in the Philippines to be invited and accepted. What does this mean for us? It means that by being a participant member, we commit to aligning with the UNGC's Sustainable Development Goals and implementing them through our current and future projects. Our affiliation with the UNGC has since been our blueprint for our sustainability roadmap, providing a clearer pathway to becoming a more sustainable company. Since our membership in 2020, out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we have achieved more than half at this point. The challenge remains, but we are steadfast in our commitment. These are some of the ongoing projects that the Bayo Foundation is working on, and the corresponding goals that they align with. We realize that this is a journey, and we not only have dreams, but plans and ongoing frameworks to continue our Journey to Zero initiatives. The work is not easy, but it is possible by bringing like-minded artists, creative minds, and communities together. By working with affiliate brands, Bayo, Unica, and vice versa, the Foundation continues to spearhead the path towards sustainable development and a circular business model. We know that it is good to be sustainable and have as little carbon footprint as possible. Brands worldwide have shifted to communicate that to their consumers. But before we can achieve that, we need to know how much carbon emissions our garments produce. And we want our patrons to know as well. For us, it is essential to be transparent and for our consumers to be informed about their purchases. Every product on our website features its carbon footprint. We partnered with Green Story. They are our environmental consultants that provide independently verifiable impact metrics. We also participate in their carbon offsetting programs. We buy the carbon credits that Green Story offers for several carbon offsetting projects from around the world. Through carbon offsetting, we financially support these projects like the Renewable Energy Burgos Wind Project in the Philippines, reforestation efforts by sea trees, and social causes like clean drinking water in Cambodia, so that they can continue to remove carbon emissions in the atmosphere or provide help to communities. Our business activities, including value chains, in effect, become carbon neutral. More importantly, I'd like to talk about our meaningful collaboration with MADE. The masks are a powerful representation of purposeful connections, one of Bayo's guiding principles that resonate with goal-oriented collaborations. We connect with individuals, organizations, communities belonging to both private and public institutions to create partnerships that enable a shared vision for the creative industry, an integral part of the sustainable future. With the Filipino heritage as the bloodline of the brand, we use art to help revive our traditions through the communities that the Bayo Foundation supports. More than masks, the Metrobank Foundation and the Bayo Foundation have also committed to donating a hand loom to a weaving community. This aligns with Bayo's mission of strengthening local weaving communities and supporting other social programs. This project with MADE and the artists highlight what these purposeful connections can do. Create a positive social impact while uplifting every party involved. With something as simple as these masks, we collaboratively empower small weaving communities, support sustainable supply chains, and celebrate local artists. I am a proud member of Bayo's creative team. I speak to you today to share the privilege of working alongside a team guided by our CEOs and creative chief officer, where art is an integral part that empowers the company's fashion business and corporate social responsibilities. Art interconnects with significant cultural aspects, which Bayo fully supports. We are all gathered to celebrate the immense talents that the Metrobank Foundation and MAID have acknowledged. Bayo is one with you in this celebration. We echo the power of art in uniting these purposeful connections that have found us all together in this virtual gathering. Kindred spirits, united by art, sharing the same vision that recognizes art as an effective tool that can help spur social, economic, environmental, and cultural growth. When brands value people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships, the art of fashion can be one of the most powerful ways and among the most accessible ways to support social good. Once again, thank you to the Metrobank Foundation through MAID for giving Bayo this opportunity to share our journey.
Thank you, Ms. Andrea of Bayo, for helping empower the Filipina women through fashion from weaver to weaver. This year, MAID is proud to be working with Bayo to support sustainable livelihood programs for local weaving communities. Moving on to our next speaker, our second guest for today comes from another organization who advocates for the development of the creative industries and the power of arts to inspire social progress. Mr. Marc Ocampo is an arts manager for the British Council in the Philippines, managing their programs in the arts, creative economy, creative hubs, and craft sustainability. Before the British Council, he was Asia Center Program Coordinator for the Japan Foundation, developing new projects in arts, culture, and intellectual exchange in the Philippines.
Thanks for that introduction. I wanted to start out by thanking Metrobank Foundation and the MAID Lecture Series for inviting us this afternoon and giving us the opportunity to talk about our work as it relates to creativity and social impact. Thanks also for everyone signing on and giving up your Saturday afternoon to listen. Just to introduce myself, my name is Marc Ocampo and I'm an arts manager at the British Council in the Philippines. I've worked for the Council for nearly 3 years now, managing our programs in the creative industries, cultural engagement, and craft sustainability. A little bit about my background. I'm an art historian and I've worked in the arts, culture, and education sector for at least 10 years at this point. Before the British Council, I worked for the Japan Foundation's Asia Center, developing and coordinating their arts, culture, and intellectual exchange. At the time, the Asia Center was focused on supporting creativity and disaster resilience, as Japan had been in the process of recovering from the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. I've also worked supporting the education programs of the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Johns Hopkins University Center for Talented Youth program in the United States. For those unfamiliar with the British Council is the UK's international organization for cultural relations and educational opportunities. We build connections, understanding, and trust between people in the UK and other countries through arts and culture, education, and the English language. Last year, we reached over 80 million people directly and 791 million people overall, including online, through broadcasts and publications. The British Council is driven by a vision for a connected and trusted UK in a more connected and trusting world. And our ambitious goals can only be achieved by working with and connecting and supporting others. We not only work with trusts, foundations, corporations, governments, and multilaterals, but we also work with individual artists, artisans, creative cultural workers, arts and culture organizations, universities, and creative hubs. Specifically in the Philippines, I want to focus on our three main areas of work. So the first one is the creative economy and creative goods through the Creative Hubs for Good program. Second is our work supporting the sustainability of craft through the Crafting Futures Global program. And last is our work brokering and connecting creatives and artists through the Connections Through Culture grant program. Obviously, last year was really dominated by COVID-19 and the impact of the pandemic on our work. We're committed to ensuring that people all over the world and people in the Philippines have access to culture and cultural connections. Last year, we focused on new approaches to our work that we hope will continue to provide opportunities for artists and the creative sector in the Philippines. For us, the really important question to ask was, how do we translate our pre-pandemic work that was done face-to-face and on the ground? And like many others, we faced the same challenges in COVID-19, both in the way we work as an organization, but also how we support our stakeholders and partners. It was really difficult to keep in regular contact with our partners, with our stakeholders. Our activities before the pandemic were, for the most part, face-to-face and in person. And we had to move all of that quickly to the digital space. As you know, there were lockdowns and quarantines all over the world. And at the same time, we really needed to listen to what our partners and stakeholders were dealing with, because they were also going through the impact of COVID-19. And we needed to hear and better understand what kind of support they needed at the time. Early on, we organized online platforms to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on artists and creatives. We listened and we learned and we developed new offers that would help them. And one of those new resources that we've been able to provide is called the Creative Communities Learning Lab, which is a series of dynamic and accessible online learning modules for creative and cultural professionals around the world. And if you can go to our website and find out more information and how to take these free courses online. But I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit about the three main areas of our work to talk about creativity and social impact. So the first, obviously, was our work in the creative economy, supporting creative hubs. For those that are not familiar with creative hubs, they are a place that can bring creative people together. They provide space and support for networking, sustainability, and community engagement with creative, cultural, and technological sectors. Research done by the British Council found that hubs are catalysts for innovation, inclusive growth in the creative economy, and positive change in our cities. Our program globally developed resources and opportunities for hubs, and the Creative Innovators Program in the Philippines provided management training, mentorship, and networking opportunities for creative hubs and their leaders here in the Philippines. And it's best to think of creative hubs as an ecology. They come in really many different shapes and sizes, and they have very different missions and goals. There are hubs in the Philippines that focus on creating inclusive spaces for LGBTQ communities. So hubs like Pineapple Lab. There are hubs that focus on supporting artisan and maker communities. So hubs like Holy Cow in Cebu or Common Room here in Manila. Hubs were really lacking in support before the pandemic. And it's why the British Council developed the Creative Hubs for Good program. Creative hubs in their communities, like many creatives, were hit very hard by COVID-19. They weren't able to conduct their activities. It caused them to lose revenue. Many had to close their physical spaces either temporarily or permanently. But what we learned about hubs during the pandemic was sometimes they were in the best position to react quickly through something we called creative resilience. At the start of the pandemic, there were hubs organizing food drives or relief packages for essential goods. Hubs were moving to digital commerce so that their members would not lose on their livelihoods, that they could continue to sell their products. And hubs also checked in with their communities and their partners to amplify COVID-19 initiatives that were happening that weren't necessarily getting out to the community because communication was really difficult at the time. There was a lot of miscommunication and just difficulty in connecting with people. And also hubs were able to gather data on how much their industries were losing so that they could lobby support from the Philippine government. And part of our work last year was commissioning a report called Generating Creative Value and Resilience During Pandemic Times, which dives into how creative hubs in the Philippines reacted and navigated through COVID-19. If you go to the British Council Philippines website, you can find more information about this report. And the other program that I wanted to talk about was Crafting Futures. Crafting Futures supports the future of craft through research and education. It offers designers and artisans access to knowledge and expertise, as well as new markets and audiences. In Southeast Asia, our program supports economic empowerment through the development of creative social enterprise and design-led skills for female artisans. And in the Philippines, our Crafting Futures program is known as Woven Networks. Woven Networks aims to spark exciting collaborative research and development in the weaving sector in the Philippines. It bridges the rich but forgotten heritage of handloom weaving with new ideas, materials, and skills to enable the sector to increase its value and expand its relevance. As part of the program last year, we offered a grant for community leaders who had been working with artisan and craft communities in the Philippines in very remote, hard to reach areas. So places, communities in the Cordilleras, in Mindanao. And these grantees used the British Council Digital Craft Toolkit and developed projects to support these local artisans and craft entrepreneurs in their communities. And they used their project to address the need to build the knowledge capacity of local artisans with entrepreneurial skills to enhance the economic sustainability of their craft. And as similar kind of issues last year with COVID-19, the grantees had difficulty going to their communities because of lockdowns and quarantine restrictions. So a lot of them developed hybrid projects where they would be able to work with their communities virtually through things like a Zoom workshop, though some grantees were able to meet with their communities but still follow COVID-19 protocols like mask wearing and social distancing. But luckily they were able to continue their projects even in the midst of the pandemic. And the last program that I wanted to talk about is the British Council's Connections Through Culture program. The program develops collaborations and supports fruitful and long-lasting relationships between the UK and countries around the world, especially here in East Asia. The Mobility Grant Program was to develop artistic and cultural exchanges and collaborations between artists in the UK and East Asia. However, we had to pause the mobility part of the grant program and focus on supporting collaborative projects. So last year, we supported 6 collaboration projects and 3 research grants in the Philippines. And again, before COVID-19, these grants were meant for travel and mobility, for artists to meet, for cultural exchange, and to develop new projects together. With the pandemic and the uncertainty of travel and continued quarantines, we were not able to support travel and mobility. Instead, we supported the actual collaboration, whether virtual or long distance. And really, more than ever, in the midst of the pandemic, which is still ongoing, artists and creatives still need support. And the British Council was able to provide these opportunities for connecting digitally and remotely, and to develop works that are making important contributions to society. And I want to highlight two works of the two grantees. One example is a work by two performance artists from the UK and the Philippines called Intimate Threads. They developed a digital residency through the grant that we provided to explore themes of gender variance, LGBTQ plus rights, pre-colonial traditions, and the relationship with nature. And they were able to hold this residency online thanks to the grant, and then create a new performance together. And then another project that I wanted to highlight was the Kamustahan Art Projects. A grantee used the grant to develop this project with Filipino labor migrants from the UK, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Through the project, they were able to bring the Filipino labor migrants into conversations with artists and family members and policymakers to shine a spotlight on their lives. And through the grant, they will be creating new artworks that will be shown in a virtual exhibit online to honor the contributions of these migrant workers during COVID-19. And you can find out more about these projects on our website. Just to sort of kind of sum it all up, the main work of the British Council is to build these connections and to support these artists and creatives, and then provide opportunities for them to develop new programs and continue the work that they're doing. And it was very difficult last year with COVID-19. But one of the things that we learned was listening to our stakeholders and our partners and what they needed, and then shifting our work to address a lot of the needs that they were telling us that they needed, whether it was just continued support or providing them the kind of knowledge to gain new skills, whether through like the Creative Communities Learning Lab that I talked about earlier. And so we were able to continue the work that we were doing with artists and creatives in the Philippines. And we will continue to do that work. And we really thank the Metro Bank Foundation for letting us share what we've done in the last year during COVID-19. So thank you for this time and for listening to me. And if you want to hear more about our work or get in touch, my email should be up on the presentation. Please feel free to email and connect with us. And we're happy to hear from all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing the good work that you do at the British Council. While listening to our speakers, we also enjoyed hearing from our audience. And like you, we are just as excited to ask our speakers your questions. To kickstart our question and answer portion, we picked out 2 questions from our live audience who are now lucky owners of the Made Experience Kit. But first, let us welcome back our guests, Ms. Anna Lagon, Ms. Andrea de Torre from Bayo, and Mr. Marc Ocampo from the British Council Philippines. Magandang hapon.
Hi, Lalaine.
Good afternoon.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you for joining us again today. For our first question, we could start the conversation with the institutional perspective. So with businesses and institutions facing vulnerabilities during this time of crisis, how were you able to shift or pivot your programs to respond to the needs of the community? Like specific areas where you focused, what were the needs, and how were you really able to address what is needed during that time? This is for the communities. You could start with Bayo.
Okay, let me answer that. The pandemic has been a real point where everyone has to rethink and reimagine how we do business and how we can use it as a reason for going out of our comfort zone and looking after the communities. And because our business is related to fashion, we have a lot of means to expand the livelihood, share what we can do for the community, which is, for us, it's really connecting with the weaving communities. They have been affected because of the pandemic and because of the limited orders that they are getting. And we have come to the point where, I have to personally go to the communities and ask them what they exactly need. Because it's essential for you to understand, the challenges that they are facing, and not just to dole out anything. So there is a process that we are helping each other and collaborating as well with other stakeholders. The government has a lot to do with the help that we are doing. Like, for example, the DOST, DSWD, and the LGUs. They are strong members of those who are helping these communities, and Bayo is there to bridge the gaps on what else is lacking in terms of helping these communities. So identifying those opportunities for Bayo to share its capacity on extending help. So in essence, the nature of our business has become our strength in extending help to the communities. Andrea has shared earlier how we support them in terms of providing the materials, giving them the essential capacity building that they will need. We do workshops. In spite of the pandemic, there is always an opportunity if you really want to help. And from last year until today, we have been actively communicating and physically interacting with them as well. Of course, observing all the protocols. But if you are really intentional in the way you want to extend help, then it becomes easy for most part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anna. A key takeaway from that statement is even if businesses are faced with vulnerabilities, communities are not forgotten, and there are several efforts as well as structures of support where support for communities can be taken from. And so for the British Council would like to consult, like if it's not a business, it's really, you talked about a lot of programs for the creatives. So how were you able to pivot and provide programs to address the new needs of this changing normal for our creative communities?
So, like I mentioned earlier, the British Council is a cultural relations organization. And what we do is we build networks, we make connections, and we provide opportunities and platforms. And before the pandemic, that was done face-to-face, in person, on the ground. But during the pandemic, early on in 2020, we had to at first organize kind of events where we were able to gather our partners and our stakeholders, the creative hubs, creative hub leaders, artisan communities, to listen to what was going on, what they were experiencing, because they were all experiencing it in different ways. There are creative hubs who are for-profit, and so they were experiencing issues with their livelihood and their business sustainability. Hubs like Pineapple Lab that focused on kind of LGBT communities, they couldn't meet their community in person because there wasn't, people weren't allowed to gather in closed spaces. So we really had to listen to what they were going through, and then based on our conversations with them, we developed or we pivoted our own programming. So one of those things like I talked about was the Creative Communities Learning Lab. One of the things that we learned was people still needed access to skills and knowledge building. So we developed these free online learning modules that would help creative hub leaders address some of these needs that they had mentioned. So that was kind of in the beginning what was important for us, to know what they needed, and then we changed our offers and our programs to meet them where they needed.
Yes, so in programming for cultural response, it's really important to listen to what the community has to say from the grassroots. We are here to also share some comments that we got from our live audience. Comments for Bayo, and then maybe we could end it with a discussion. Like for Patrick Jason Sodusta, he shared that his university system also supports weaving communities by sourcing the academic regalia, the sablay, directly from weaving communities. Marie Venustan also shared that she lauds the initiative of Bayo for sustainable industry practice. And we have a question from Margot Nicole Alpajora. She asked, what is the importance of art in fashion? I believe there are a lot of collaborations as well with art organizations, with Bayo Foundation. If you may share more about it to our audience.
Well, art is an essential part of our lives, right? It is so powerful that it stays on long after any one of us is here. So it can really influence our sense of self. So we use art in fashion, like in every aspect. And because of that importance, we are able to use it as our point of reference in our design process. So without art, it's boring to have just plain clothes. So in that sense, it's really an integral part of our process. And the other collaborations that we have through art, we have some. The recent one is about to be launched this year. It's a community partnership program with the weavers and our own creatives. We wanted to draw a showcase wherein our own in-house team of creatives will be mentoring the weavers on how they can develop a product, so that the purpose of this is for us to truly share, the help and the process of doing a product. And through this process, we hope that eventually the weavers will be independent and will be able to create their own brand. So we will be putting in efforts like capacity building for digital readiness, so that their product would have a space to go after it is made. But before that, we have to test the market. So we will host them on our platform, and all the profits of that will go to the weaver and the partner creative. So it's really a project of the foundation, just to push some more forward, the plans to make these communities independent and able to create their own niche market. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Anna. Ms. Maria Teresa Martinez asked this, and maybe Bayo and the British Council can also address this conversation. No? I'm also concerned about the creative products of our indigenous people. Despite their huge contribution to society, indigenous people's creative products remain in constant struggle in integrating in the formal market. The indigenous people's creative products also face the risk of cultural misappropriation and use for commercial purposes without permission. So how can you help our indigenous people cope up in the midst of the pandemic and at the same time eradicate this abuse? Maybe how the both institutions work with and take care of the indigenous people that you engage in the various projects that you discussed.
May I go ahead with that?
Yes, and then maybe we'll have Sir Mark after that.
We are very careful in our partnerships, especially that Bayo has, we want to maintain that integrity in doing business. So we partner, I mentioned earlier, we partnered with government institutions just to make sure someone higher than us will police the activities that we are doing with the communities. It is really essential to make sure that the process we are doing with them would support the welfare of, the culture of the Filipino culture. This is what Bayo has been really standing for, and we intend to make sure that this is really observed. So, you will be so surprised because the IP communities are also very much into improving their craft, and somehow they themselves are open in such a way that they are very welcoming in terms of developing their capabilities. And of course, we have to make sure also that we observe the do's and don'ts of their patterns. But our intention is to support them, to help them, and they know that. So they give us the trust to lead the way for them.
Thank you for that. Maybe we could hear from the British Council, Sir Mark.
Sure. Similar to Bayo, when it comes to our work with artisan communities and indigenous communities, we're very careful about who we partner with. So in the grant program that I talked about earlier for Woven Networks, the grantees were people with a long history of already working with these communities, and they were trusted leaders in their communities. And so we are very careful to make sure that the people we connect with are already trusted by these artisan communities. And then this issue of the intellectual property rights of artisans and weavers is something that we are looking into and how we can better support them. So a lot of our work is to empower the artisans themselves to, what they're lacking is access to resources, to skills, to knowledge. And so our resources like the Digital Craft Toolkit helps empower these artisans to be able to make decisions for themselves, informed decisions for themselves, and to be able to develop their own businesses so that they aren't taken advantage of. But yeah, that is a really good question and something we are looking into. How do we make sure that the intellectual property rights of these makers, these artisans, these handloom weavers are respected and cared for, and that they don't lose, they don't lose it, or they don't lose their ability to make their work.
May I respond to that, Liling? I just want to add to what Mark said, that there is always a choice given to the community. The weavers would always have that priority to choose the route that they want. So for us in the community partnership program, there are options. If they want to create the product by themselves and directly sell them from their own, because some of them already have some social media pages, or would they want us to help them? But I was so happy that they put all the trust to us, and they all agreed that we should start it with our own platform so that we can help them validate the experience that we can share from our learnings from our business. We really pass it everything to them so that they would know that this is the process that we have done, and we have done so far in a somehow a successful way. So we're sharing that, and they made that choice to have their products on our platform. But there is a limit of 3 months, because after 3 months we will hand over the design to them and teach them how to maintain the quality of their products. So there is that sustainability aspect as well. Thank you.
This is indeed an important conversation that we should be having, working with cultural programming. And a key takeaway from both organizations would be social advocacies and working with communities is more about a partnership model that protects and empowers the vulnerable community. Now we will read out some questions for the British Council. Mr. Mark Celso asks, how do creative hubs sustain themselves in terms of financial returns? Also, since there is a lack of foot traffic caused by the pandemic, what were the alternatives done by such cultural hubs?
Yeah, so that's another really good question, especially considering, COVID-19 is still happening and going to places is still really restricted. A lot of creative hubs had to pivot to digital e-commerce very quickly. A lot of creative hubs were already in the process of doing that. Hubs like Common Room that support local makers, they were already sort of in the process of doing that. And the pandemic just sort of accelerated it. And then there are hubs that had not thought of selling online or providing that space. And so one of the things we were able to do was we offered a Creative Hub Leaders grant using a toolkit that the British Council developed. And then a hub like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Escolta and Hub Make Lab in Escolta. They were one of the grantees. And they used the grant to work with their artisans, sellers, to develop workshops that they could offer online. And part of that, those online workshops became part of Hub Make Lab's online website now. So now they sort of are starting to develop an online community, whereas before the community was in person in Escolta. But now they've, again, pivoted to an online community. So that was the main thing that hubs had to do, was they had to focus on digital e-commerce and being able to provide services or products that way.
Thank you for that. It's really going digital, which also allowed MADE to use this platform to reach an audience and to reach our speakers and talk about this very relevant topic. Another question from Chris Rentoy for the British Council. Does the Creative Hub support youth internship for skill development and learning? Creative economy has shown global growth with high percentage of self-employment caused by this pandemic. Do you accept internships?
The British Council itself doesn't accept internships. But yeah, there are creative hubs that work with youth and providing youth skills development. So one creative hub that we've worked with or that we've supported through the Hubs program is Zapateria in Marikina. Zapateria created a series of workshops and toolkits to empower young women makers to be able to learn how to make their own shoes. And then to maybe potentially develop their own kind of enterprises, their own businesses out of that skill. And they continue, Zapateria as a hub continues to create toolkits and workshops that support young people interested in making. So Marikina is a shoemaking capital of the Philippines. And so this is what Zapateria is focusing on, providing the skills for young people in Marikina to develop shoemaking skills in case they want to go into that, continue that business. But it depends on the hubs. Hubs are very different, and there's just a variety of hubs in the Philippines.
Thank you for that, Mark. And maybe to wrap up this portion of the webinar, we leave our speakers with two questions to answer. First is, what's next for your organization or your brands? And also, we would like to ask what we can do individually to continue supporting our local creative economy. What's next?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's next for the British Council is, again, we continue the work we do connecting creatives and artists from the Philippines to the UK to give them opportunities and platforms to work together. We're about to announce our next batch of Connections to Culture grantees. And every year we hope to continue this grant program. Hopefully next year it'll go back to a mobility grant program where the grantees can travel to the UK, or grantees from the UK can travel to the Philippines. And we are hoping to develop new courses for the Creative Communities Learning Lab, new free courses that creatives can take. Just to continue our work. I don't remember what the second question was.
Second question is how we can, as individuals, support our local creative economy. Any tips for our viewers who would like to support a creative?
Yeah, I mean, get to know the creative hubs that are in your community. These creative hubs support larger artisan maker communities. Like the hub in Escolta, Hub Make Lab. There are hubs in Marikina, in Cebu, and they support local makers. And if you support them, you're supporting these great artisan communities in the Philippines.
Thank you, Mark. So what's next for Bayo and the Bayo Foundation?
Well, we have so much plans and wishes actually, but the very near one is coming up is the community partnership program, which I mentioned earlier. But together with that, we have a network of activities like we are starting to do our soil to garment program, wherein we are communicating and doing some plannings with the farmers. So Bayo is now, we have actually started our sericulture. This is for the Philippine silk. So we are empowering the women farmers in Benguet. And we have just made our very first harvest 2 months ago. And we intend to continue that. And the next sericulture activity will be in 2 months and harvest again for this year. So we will be using those cocoons as thread for the weaving communities. And aside from that, we're also pushing for the organic cotton farming. And we are partnering with IPs in Mindoro. And this is, again, another way of proving that local materials, local fibers are available if we make them available. So we are doing our best to really be at the forefront of sustainability by starting from the ground up. So, these projects would be a network of other stakeholders joining us here, but Bayo is the pioneer organization pushing for those activities. And we continue to do our capacity building for the community of weavers. Soon we will be opening a creative hub in partnership with another LGU, and I guess I will have a lot of things to learn from the British Council. So Mark, expect Bayo to knock on your doors very soon, or maybe after this event. So there's a lot of things that British Council has been doing to help the communities, and I think there is also a good connection there, with our purposeful connections, bridging gaps between different stakeholders. So there's a lot of things going on for Bayo, and we continue our thrust also to reduce our carbon emission. It was mentioned earlier that we are measuring our carbon footprints, and it's on our website. If you purchase a product, you will see the number of carbon emission that you are giving up, but the good thing there is we are offsetting them as well. So maybe I will consume the rest of the time if I share a lot more, but do visit our website to find out more about our sustainability journey and the other things that we do for the community. We're just quite slow on sharing our initiatives because as we want it to be proven first before we even talk about it. So we are kind of slow in our communication, but rest assured that Bayo is very active behind the scenes, really doing a lot of things behind the scenes. And Andrea, you might want to say anything, please go ahead.
For individuals, I think we can have 2 points in mind. If you want to support and empower our local economies and communities, first is find alternatives to your favorite products. Find local alternatives and support them. And if that's not a possibility right now, empower them by sharing their costs, or find brands that have the same costs you identify with and share those. So I think those are the 2 most actionable things that we can do to support our local economy and creativity.
Thank you for that. So before we say goodbye to our speakers, we would like to open the opportunity to connect. So we invite our speakers. How can creatives or our audience reach your institutions? This is the time to plug your social media channels or invite them to any upcoming events from your respective institutions.
Andrea, please share our social media.
You can click our socials on Maid's post. It's Bayo on Facebook and Bayo Clothing at Bayo Clothing on Instagram. And you can check our website, styleshops.com.ph, so you can see the sustainability and the carbon emissions and the metrics that we talked about earlier.
For the British Council, please follow our website, britishcouncil.ph. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at phbritish. And later in a couple months in November, we'll be having a very big regional conference called Partner ASEAN. So please keep an eye out for that. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter to keep updated to our activities and our opportunities.
Let's empower each other by connecting and sharing our platforms. Once again, we thank our speakers from Bayo and from the British Council for being with us this afternoon and sharing the advocacies that you do for our creative economy. We also thank specific members of our audience who sent in their questions. Patrick Jason Sodusta as well as Patrick Celso. We have two Patricks for your questions, and congratulations as well as you now have a Maid Experience Kit. At Maid, we believe that everyone is an artist and everyone is born with a creative spirit. So earlier this week, we asked you guys to tell us that you're an artist without actually telling us that you're an artist. And here are some of the wittiest answers that we received. From Berks Benigno, nauubos ang oras sa loob ng bookstore sa supplies section. Yes, just like you, we miss going to our favorite art stores. But this time around, it's the online stores where the boodle finds, the art finds can be found. The next entry is something which we're sure visual artists can really relate to. So Christian Cadlaon need not send us anything but just send us a photo which needs no explanation. So before any masterpiece is accomplished, it starts with this grid. Congratulations to Berks and Christian for winning the Maid Experience box. Before we end, we would like to share a few more answers that would help brighten up your weekend. From @JohnnyVince of Instagram, kape tinimpla ko pero bakit lasang pintura? #relate. So from Lady Yalong, who sent this on Facebook, paint stains on my favorite pambahay. And finally, from Marvin Kizon, ako'y isang kasangkapan na nagpapakain sa kaluluwa ng isang nasyon. Thank you very much. So everyone, let's continue this conversation online. Leave us your comments here on Facebook or post a story on Instagram and tag us at Metrobank Art and Design. As part of our advocacy to give voice and opportunities for young artists, we enjoin you to please visit our digital art space at www.maidartdepot.ph and check out our digital exhibition of the 2021 Maid Spectrum as well as our curated Maid video playlist. Let's binge watch Maid this weekend. So send us a message too if you'd like to request for a certificate for today's webinar. We would like to thank our advocacy partners, Rank Magazine and Bayo, for supporting today's event. Please visit their websites to know more about how they are supporting Filipino creatives all over the country. We'd also like to thank our media partners, Art Plus Magazine, The Philippine Star, Manila Bulletin, and Adobo Magazine, The World on Creativity. Maraming salamat for tuning in. We hope you had a wonderful time. Support an artist today, follow these brands, and help build a society where art is at the forefront of change. Have a great weekend at maraming salamat.